Alright, so last time we saw the Enjomor, I popped the head out, off, and took the piston out because this brown piston ring was possibly causing some issues. It's the stock piston ring that everybody seems to have an issue with, and it when we measured this, we got a 19.8 millimeter bore and a 2.4 millimeter gap here for the ring to fit in. And when I was looking for replacements, I found 20 millimeter and 2.4 millimeter thick rings, and I suspect that is the issue with this brown one, is that it's actually a bit oversized. I found some 20 by 2 millimeter O-rings and 19 by 2.5. So I'm thinking that pulling this O-ring off, this current piston ring off of here, and it's such a tight fit. Alright, let's see what we can do to get that. Okay, so if I squeeze and push with my fingers, it makes a little bit of a gap there, and I can get toothpick underneath it, and then using that toothpick we can just, in fact, we'll take 2 toothpicks and pop it up like so, and then work our way around, lickety-split. Now, that brown O-ring, and get one of these 2.5, or these ones that measure the same, theoretically, the 20 by 2.4, and that is actually a tiny bit, the green version is a little bit smaller. Let's see if we can fit that on there, and I'm gonna wipe that gap out. Behind the piston ring. Yeah, so like I said, we measured that gap at a 2.4 millimeter wide, and the piston was 19.8, but when I try to overlay this 20 millimeter 2.4 thickness one, it's a little smaller than the brown one, so if we pop that in, oh yeah, and it's a looser fit in there. So I wonder, is that brown one just oversized? Alright, battery's still good. Yeah, that gap is still measuring 2.4. So yeah, this is a 2.5 thickness O-ring. That brown O-ring was too fat for that gap, I think. So if we measure this one that's supposed to be a 2.4 millimeter thickness, yeah, we're coming up at 2.35 on my not the greatest calipers, so this brown original piston ring was a bit oversized, and these new ones that are supposed to be 2.4 are a bit undersized. So I think that actually is, with a bit of quick luck, going to be a better fit piston ring. And I know that, like, it wasn't always sticking, but sometimes this brown one was really stiff. And even now, like, it's just harder than these green rings and less flexible. So I think doing that replacement, even though I wasn't having a ton of issues earlier, that replacement is going to be good. So we'll just get this put back in here. But first I'm going to have to clean up this sealing surface on the head and the sealing surface here, because I did put that silicone gasket maker on the last time I assembled it, because this head gasket design is also not super great. If the piston, because this liner sits flush with the casting, and the O-ring for the head gasket is also sitting this way to sit flush with the casting, I think my piston liner is a little bit deep in there, and then it doesn't provide enough. It doesn't let the O-ring for the head gasket seat all the way around because it's a little inset, which, you know, is an issue that I had with a similar kind of issue I had with my ET1, where the piston liner wasn't sitting out enough to get a seal. But if I get should be able to, there we go, rotating the toothpick allowed it to pop underneath there. So with this ring out, then I can take, with the rubber O-ring for the head gasket out, then I can take my Dremel with the Scotch-Brite thing on it, and I'm not using pressure, I'm just running it on there to get the sealant off. It's kind of the nice thing about these abrasive Scotch-Brite style wheels is that you can use the pressure to control how much gets taken off pretty easily. So there, got all the silicone off of there. So I'll be able to redo that seal on there, and same thing will happen with the head here. You can see the casting isn't perfectly smooth here because it was rough machined to and uses the piston liner, the cylinder liner, and you can see when I put the sealant in, it's got a chunk here, and you can see where this liner is inset, and that's why I had to put the sealant in there, is because the inset liner then means that it doesn't hold the O-ring up to the head tight enough to seal. So same thing here, we can set this on end. There we go. Like I said, all that I needed to do is get that silicone out of there, and then I can use my wet rag here and get the piston rod rotated so it'll fall back down there. There we go. So that's clean. I will probably fire some well, I'll have to oil this really good when I put it back together, so I'm gonna have to go get my oil dropper out of the garage. Now, I wonder, can I get my oh no, that's what happened there. All right. Okay. The big end is too big to fit into through the cylinder liner, but I can pull it out through the back like that. Now I can have it out of the way to get a good wipe in the cylinder quick for any of the goo that got in there. All right. Alright, well, I'm gonna take a moment to go get my oil dropper out of the garage, and then we will be back. So I was feeling not well the other day. It turns out it was COVID. I have medication, fully taken care of it, feeling better already, but you know, stay safe out there. Try to be careful, and if you're not feeling well, check it out and try to avoid spreading it around. Alright, got the oil from the garage, the black silicone cone gasket maker from is out so that I can put this head back on, and it's time to stick the new piston in. So the piston rod, there, I've got a scratch on the top to match with on the big end, so I'm going to slide the rod in, and then the piston ring we put on there, I'm just going to get a dab of oil around it. I'll just rotate that to get that oil in underneath there, and then gonna got a wrist pin here, put a dab of oil in piston and one in the small end there. And get the wrist pin partway in there. And slide it all the way in. So that was oiled, and now put some oil on the apron of the piston there. Give that a rotation. Put it in, and now gotta get the there. Pop our ring in, and now you can push all the way in there to get the big end in place on the crankshaft. Put a dab of oil in there. Give it a little rotate there before we put the strap on. And then the strap also has a tiny file mark on it. And there we go. The top strap bolt in, and I can just turn this up so I can drop that in. There we go. Those just need to be snug enough not to come loose, because in a there we go. You get that from touching the pretty good. Yeah, internal combustion engines, the only pressure on here is always on this side of the joint. The bottom cap doesn't have any stress on it. Really, just the intake stroke is when it has to pull down on the piston. Otherwise, all the pressure is the piston rod pushing down on this joint or the crankshaft pushing up for compression. So there we go. That's all in place, so we'll put it at bottom dead center there. And I've got the 4 head bolts and my head and the ring there. And I'm going to take and wipe the head with the IPA a little bit, just because I may have gotten some oil on here when we oiled the piston there, obviously. Alright, now carefully put our head gasket back in, and then because this liner is inset there, and I don't trust that, I'm going to take the teeniest bit of this black gasket maker with a toothpick. Oh, and that is not gasket goo, that is a hardened piece. There. This is a very old tube. It's the same one I've had for years, so I have to keep breaking the plug out of it when it sets every time I put it away. So thought I'd stuck that gasket in. Okay, so the key is I'm going to carefully put the gasket maker right in this edge. Between the head gasket and the casting, because that's the gap I want to fill, and you just need the bare enough of this to supplement and fill in the tiny gaps that might be left from this fit problem. You don't, like, in this application, we are not attempting to replace the entire sealing surface with the gasket goo. We're just trying to help it out a little bit. If we were replacing this whole thing with gasket goo, I would not put the original ring back in there, and then I would put slightly thicker line, still kind of in the same place here, but I said it would be a little thicker, and then the groove for where the head gasket goes would be the spot for the extra goo to squish into to help it make a better seal, so that it doesn't get into the cylinder. Because of course the entire point of, or the big problem with doing it this way, or with doing anything with this gasket goo for a head gasket, is that if the gasket goo gets into the piston, it can break off inside the engine while the engine is running. So, alright, and this is close to lined up. I'm going to set it on there and squish it a little bit, and then lift and rotate and squish it a little more, and now I'm going to get lined up and start putting head bolts in. And a little bit of a squish and rotate helps spread it a bit more evenly. I suppose. And I just got real nervous about this. So I'm gonna, okay, I didn't get any in the wrong spot. Lay that flat in there again. So afraid that it moved too much there and it might be getting in the way of the valves or something, but nope. There it is. Again, the major, like, you have to be super careful with the goo because it likes to get everywhere, and it's fantastic stuff when you get it right where you need it, but as soon as it gets anywhere you don't want it, then it becomes a tremendous problem. So alright, 4 in, and I'll snug them all up. Alright, now 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright. That is the head gasket back in with the sealant on it. 24 hours to make sure that cures real good, and compression. There we go, you can hear it sucking air. It's got compression back, so we'll just let that cure and then it should run. And make sure and get plenty of oil in there with our piston. In fact, I'll drop a bit more down the back side since we're here. Alright. That's going to have to sit, like I said, 24 hours. And while we're waiting, I don't know, I'm going to decide about doing something with the muffler maybe. Other folks have pulled these plugs out, but I don't have a punch, I don't think, or a good setup for punching those back out. So I might see if I've got a long drill bit or something to get those out. Otherwise, there's lots of room on this brass piece to do a little bit of more work. I also might look and see if I've got the right kind of brass from the other engines and the correct tap and die for this. I may make a straight pipe for this, but it does look really nice with that on it. So we'll see if I decide to do anything with that while I'm modifying this again. But for now, I think the fixed, more correct piston ring is going to be a nice correction on it.